A game's development is never as straightforward as it seems. A lot of games have their development process shrouded in obscurity, which is a sad but growing trend, while others have a wealth of insight into the whys and hows of their conceptualization. Today, I want to focus on Sonic Adventure 2, a game beloved by many, including myself, not only because the game itself is pretty good as is, but because its development story is so interesting. As such, today, I'll be going over how SA2 came to be, narrating its development story, as well as presenting some obscure and unknown trivia about the game afterwards to wrap things up. This video is the third and last part of a three-part video about the game's entire development, with the cut content and prototypes already being done, and this trivia video being its end. These videos are also part of a remake project I'm making of these 5 videos, with all of them already being done and SA2 being the last entry, except divided into 3 smaller videos. I also want to thank all modders and researchers and data miners and everyone that has made this possible, especially Speeps Highway, who was of tremendous help, as well as the Chao Island website, and everyone that has contributed to the Sonic Wiki, Sonic Retro, the Cutting Room Floor and Hidden Palace at some point. So, enough with that, and let's get into it. Much like any video essay, we have to start at the beginning, 1991. As we all know, and I won't drag this very long, Sonic was created as a rival to Mario, so Sega could compete with Nintendo not only on consoles but on a marketable mascot. And in just 2 years, it had gone from being just a sketch to a character more widely recognized by American children than Mickey Mouse, which is kinda wild to think about. However, in the later years of the decade, Sega began to lose its dominance with the start of the 5th generation of consoles, where the Saturn was overshadowed by the Nintendo 64 and the PS1. The Dreamcast, although ending up being a failure commercially, was Sega's very last effort, and a very good one at that in paper, to regain some of its foothold, though to no avail. There are multiple reasons why it failed that I won't get into now, but knowing this is important to understanding why SA2 is the way it is. What matters now is that the Dreamcast was a console that, at the time, was far more powerful than any of its competitors and allowed for projects far larger in ambition, especially in the form of Sonic Adventure. This game was developed by Sonic Team in Japan and was initially only released there in November 1998. In 1999, several of its members, including Takashi Iizuka and the series' co-creator Yuji Naka, moved to the US to develop the Western localization of the game, since the Dreamcast hadn't been released outside of Japanese markets yet, also polishing up some other areas of the game to create a product that would succeed under the eye of the West. The team members established Sonic Team USA in San Francisco, created with the objective of having a stricter management over the series' image outside of Japan, since they felt that the comics and television shows that had been produced in North America were off-brand and made Sonic feel like a completely different character. What most people didn't realize at the time was that this split was intentional for other reasons too. The other main one was to allow Yuji Naka and the Japanese team to focus on new projects such as Phantasy Star Online, while the US division could focus on the namesake of the production team. And indeed, after the launch of the Dreamcast in the West and Sonic Adventure International, Sonic Team USA got to work on their next project, Sonic Adventure 2. Takashi Iizuka didn't expect to be in charge of a sequel so quickly, as it began soon afterwards the release of SA1 International and paralleled the way Sonic 2 was developed in the US while its prequel was developed in Japan. Sonic Adventure was a fascinating but tiring enterprise. Putting Sonic in a 3D universe caused many problems for the development team, relying on an astronomical number of tests to verify that everything was working properly. While doing this, they realized that one of the most crucial aspects of a 3D game is the camera work. In order to give the right sensation of speed, it had to follow the character at the right position while offering incredible and different viewing angles at the same time, allowing for both a sense of spectacle and dynamism. It was from this observation that SA2's development began. After taking charge of the American division, Takashi Iizuka's first order of business was to make SA1's structure more dynamic by going back to a simple principle: action. At the risk of disappointing fans of the first game, he decided to get rid of the open environments to focus on a succession of levels, further streamlining the levels themselves. In the words of Iizuka himself, for Sonic Adventure, the basis of the game was to tie the unrelenting action of the Mega Drive's first episodes to the many elements of the scenario. In Sonic Adventure 2, we wanted to go back to the series' roots. I wonder how many times I've heard that before. We focused more on the game's action rather than its story. In the first one, there were several action phases combined with exploration, looking for for items, etc. In Sonic Adventure 2, we separated those sequences according to each character. For instance, Sonic is involved in levels that rely purely on speed. Tails is used for shooting phases, while Knuckles is used for exploration phases. The game was further divided into two parts, being more of the same world although in different flavors, allowing you to experience the story from the heroes' perspective, but the villains as well. But who exactly were these villains? Well, even though they focused more on the gameplay than the story, the latter was actually one of the main bullet points they wanted to strengthen from the first game. Wanting to expand on the narrative powers of SA1, the seeds of SA2's story were planted. In order to tell it, it was decided that, yet again, new characters would have to be sketched and fleshed out. One of the ideas that Iizuka came up with was the idea of having a Dark Sonic in the game. Quickly, multiple sketches of this concept were made, and while some toyed with the idea of having the character missing an eye, it was decided that it should remain visually similar to Sonic himself but look more like his shadow than anything else. Originally, he was given the name Terios, Japanese for something along the lines of reflection of, to compare with, or to shine on, but it was eventually decided to rename him to the much simpler Shadow the Hedgehog, because he is, in fact, Sonic's shadow. The other main character would be Rouge the Bat, who was initially called Nails, most likely to tie in with the naming scheme of the other characters such as Tails. Though her concept art is very similar to the character we actually got to see, it was established early that she would be a spy, with her intentions ambiguous throughout most of the game. Although mostly speculation on my part, I believe Rouge was a mix of two scrapped characters from Sonic Adventure, being Spider-Girl and Fly the Bat, though the first one went far enough into development to receive a 3D model, used in a poster in some areas of Station Square and Speed Highway. It is unclear just how long Sega was willing to keep players in the dark about the name of the mysterious black hedgehog that appeared in the first demo for the game that came bundled with PSO, or when they were planning on revealing Rouge as a character in the game. However, the two were accidentally leaked by the toy company Resaurus. Having previously made figures of the principal cast of Sonic Adventure, a press release came out announcing a third wave of Sonic Adventure figures featuring the two new cast members of the sequel. Ironically, the figures would never see the light of day, as the company went out of business shortly afterwards. It was only after this leak, a few months before the release of the game, that Shadow was named through official channels, and the media push beginning in April of 2001 also introducing Rouge the Bat as a playable character, and finally showing that, indeed, Tails would be in the final game, because at some point this was either unclear or rejected by development members. Interestingly, Shiro Maekawa has stated that he found difficulty in writing the story for this game, but despite this, it stands as his favorite as he is emotionally attached to it, as it's the first game he wrote a story for. As I mentioned before in the Iizuka quote, the complex RPG-like elements of SA1 were dropped, in the form of the adventure fields and playstyles may be too unique, such as Big and Amy, in favor of three main styles of play: the Sonic stages from the first game for Sonic and Shadow, the shooting stages of E102 Gamma for Tails and Eggman, and the treasure hunting stages for Knuckles and Rouge. Since Gamma was unusable from a story perspective, the famous fan request of wanting to have a controllable Eggman was implemented, with all playstyles working perfectly with each character's style and background. Although it was inevitably unimplementable, the team also wanted to include branching pathways in the narrative, much like Shadow the Hedgehog from 2005. Interestingly, the scenario they presented was present in a magazine preview, where Sonic was on a submarine that began to sink, and the player would have to choose between bringing the sub to safety or having Sonic escape, although it is unknown if this was ever experimented with outside of this interview revelation. Going back to gameplay, another type of gameplay implemented was the sort of tech demo present in the first game, the Chao Garden. It was the 11th of May 2000 when the rumors of the sequel were finally confirmed by Sega at E3, with Sonic Team releasing a handful of screenshots of Sonic in an early cityscape, as well as showing off Knuckles, Eggman, and the new, revamped, improved and hugely fleshed out Chao Garden, now being an actual game feature where you can spend hours upon hours on end, instead of just a neat life simulator of the first game. As far as art style goes, it's pretty clear that SA2 has an American aura. Just as Sonic 2 was a technical showpiece for the Genesis, the same was the intent for this game, as Iizuka wanted everyone that bought it to be blown away. We really wanted the game to run at 60 frames per second, and we programmed the environment so that you could truly feel the impression of speed. Furthermore, Sonic did not only run, he could slide on a ramp and hit an obstacle by rolling into a ball. We wanted to have some kind of rhythm with the action, with new moves and upgrades being added for every character to add even more flavor, such as grinding and bouncing. Of all the changes made, it was these environments that would see the biggest, most notable updates. The Sonic universe really wasn't the same anymore. Since Sonic Team USA was located in the San Francisco Bay Area, they discovered what they called magnificent locations and wanted to insert the beauty of them into the game, which mainly took shape in the stages of City Escape, Radical Highway, Metal Harbor, Weapons Bed, etc. Of course, the game is imaginary, yet they still wanted to draw inspiration from what they saw every day, including from other famous sites such as the Yosemite National Park. The main motive behind its looks was the American atmosphere, though not an attempt to emulate it. They simply felt inspired by it and thought it would be more in touch with the Western market. Even if the game's American style design wasn't universally popular, the beauty of the game's colorful environments was very much appreciated by everyone. And I couldn't finish talking about its development without mentioning the soap shoes. Sometime after the first playable demo, a deal was made between Sega and them to use a modified version of their shoes as the official footwear for Sonic in the game. As these shoes were created purely for the purpose of grinding, and the move was one the creators of the game wanted to fully advertise, it made perfect sense to seal the partnership. Even so, this agreement only lasted for one game, although you can get them officially in Sonic Frontiers. Though originally planned to be released in early spring, the game was delayed to June 23, 2001, with the extra months of development time allowing the game to be released on Sonic's 10th anniversary. In celebration of the event, a limited edition version was also released. Dubbed the Sonic Adventure 2 Birthday Pack, the collection came with a special fold-out packaging that held a music CD, a history book, and a golden coin with the image of Sonic etched on. And that's about it for the game's development. Now let's take a look at some trivia. In Crazy Gadget, if you enter the gravity puzzle after exactly 4 minutes have passed, Eggman will threaten Sonic through the Ark's intercom a second time.
Emergency! Emergency! Well done, Sonic, but you'll never leave this room alive! Ha-ha!
However, this interaction will not trigger if you get to it before 4 minutes have passed. Though not very known, there is anti-piracy protection within the Dreamcast version of the game. If the console detects that the game is running from a copied disc and not an official GD-ROM, Eggman will be locked in a death cycle at the start of his section in Cannon Score. He'll immediately start falling through the floor, which causes him to respawn in the same position repeatedly. It is possible to reach the end of the level, but as you can imagine, it's not easy at all. By rotating the analog stick for a few moments in the theme select screen of the options menu, a chime will eventually play. Then a picture of the President's secretary will appear, allowing it to be selected as a menu theme. Even though the game has an E for everyone rating, it still has a mild lyrics warning. This is because both of the songs Deeper for Death Chamber and Kick the Rock for Wild Canyon use the word damn. Additionally, Kick the Rock refers to Rouge as sexy and smooth, followed by an innuendo referencing jewels in the next line. The parts in which both songs use the word damn are cut out of the loops found in the game and can only be heard in the soundtrack versions. In several of Sonic's jumping animation frames, he appears to be wearing his regular shoes and not the soap shoes. You can actually see him wearing the normal shoes in the first cutscene of the hero story, where he'll be wearing them when he busts out of the helicopter, then they eventually get switched. The Dreamcast version of the game had official DLC that was available from the game's website. This DLC includes the menu themes that would later be added to the Battle Edition of the game, 3 kart racing tracks with karts exclusive to those tracks, being Sonic's Special Kart, the Egg Robo, and Opa Opa from Fantasy Zone, and Halloween and Christmas-themed character skins for 2-player modes. It's possible for Tails to drown in the hero Chao garden. If he stands in the deep water for 20 seconds or so, a countdown will begin and he will start to drown. This does not deplete the player's lives and only works with Tails. This was fixed in battle as the water was made shallower. During the scene where Team Dark meets with Amy, Eggman says the line, The subtitle is hugely wrong, as the incorrect form of your is used and there should be a comma after Amy. As you may be aware, Big makes several cameo appearances throughout most stages and bosses, and sometimes even cutscenes if you look hard enough, though weirdly they can only be seen if you press the A button. This can be anywhere from him fishing in Metal Harbor or being locked in jail, finally being punished for his crimes. It is said that Iizuka was upset at the negative reception of Big the Cat, so he put his cameos in the stages out of spite, though it was most likely done as a gag due to this negative reception. In City Escape, there is a hidden message in one of the posters, being anti-XXXX-XX2 association. Since there is a 2 at the end of XX and the number of letters matches up, it was thought to stand for anti-Sony PS2 association. At the time, the Dreamcast was being dominated by the PlayStation 2 in sales. The text was removed from later versions of the game, which although this theory might be a bit of a stretch, if it didn't mean something like that, it wouldn't make sense to remove of it, would it? Radical Highway features several road signs with a US Route 38 sign, which is an actual US highway, or at least it was until 1931, when it was absorbed into US Route 6. Funnily enough, the two driving levels, being Route 101 and Route 280, are named after real-world US highways. The Magic Hands upgrade for Sonic is a reference to an early concept for Sonic 1 where the main character, then a rabbit with a bow tie, would use his ears to trap enemies, then throw them at other enemies to defeat them. The hero story opening and the beginning of City Escape are inspired by an unused sequence for Sonic 3 and Knuckles. Back when Flying Battery Zone was in between Carnival Night and Ice Cap, the end of Flying Battery was planned to have Sonic break a door off of the airship and use it as a snowboard in the beginning of Ice Cap. In the final game, Sonic just happens to come across the snowboard when he arrives at the Leather Zone. For most of the game, David Humphrey voices Shadow, but Ryan Drummond, which is the voice actor for Sonic, took over for a few lines during the final boss due to complications surrounding labor laws. According to Ryan Drummond, David Humphrey had completed a day's work of voice recording, but Sega realized they had forgotten to have him record some of Shadow's lines. Since Humphrey had already left the studio, Sega would have to pay him for another full day if they called him back to the studio. When Drummond showed up later that day, Sega asked him to impersonate David Humphrey to save money. In the game, Eggman blows up half of the moon, but in later games with cutscenes in outer space, most notably Shadow the Hedgehog and Sonic Colors, it is still perfectly intact. Also, the Earth does not appear to have any gravitational stress caused by the destruction. However, as recently confirmed by Takashi Iizuka at Sonic Boom 2013, in all later games after Sonic Adventure 2, the moon is actually still blown up. However, from Sonic Heroes onwards, the intact side of the moon is instead shown, while the part that Eggman blew up is on the opposite side of the moon. The Chao in Space 2 movie billboard, as well as the billboard advertising for the DVD edition of Chao in Space in City Escape, refers to the Chao in Space movie billboard near the entrance of Casinopolis in Sonic Adventure. Now, to finish the video, let's take a look at some glitches, most of which are actually related to the Chao Garden. By pressing the Y button on the second controller in Metal Harbor, you can gain access to a board. However, if you use this while on the results screen, Sonic will get on the board and slide off the level, and he'll seemingly fall forever as he doesn't trigger a death zone. You can get out of bounds in the Chao Garden with Sonic or Shadow. You just need to use the homing attack on the left corner of the entrance to the Chao Stadium. You'll eventually clip through the wall and the camera will start to shake for some reason, but you're able to walk as far as you want. Going a certain distance will cause items and Chao to quote-unquote swim under the garden. However, going too far can possibly cause the game to crash. There is a glitch in the Dreamcast version where it was said that if you take your reincarnated Chao to the Chao Doctor, it could crash your game and corrupt your save file. The reason for this is due to poor translation. When you take your Chao to the health center anytime after it reincarnates, you have the chance of being told how many times the Chao has done so. The thing is, the message is horribly bugged and will crash the game shortly after being loaded, at the risk of corrupting your save file. This does not happen with the Japanese version of the message, so when using Japanese text, the game doesn't crash. Similarly, if you transfer your SA1 Chao to SA2 using the VMU, you'd get a horribly bugged Chao that would appear as a regular one regardless of what you transferred, and seem to gain the name Dummy. It was found out that once it reincarnates, it gains its original color back. In the versions with the Chao Black Market, you can sell an item, usually something worth a lot of rings, and then soft reset the game right as you hear the ring counter sounds. This will result in the new ring count saving, but not saving Chao worlds, so you get the item back in your garden. On the Steam version of the game, there is a glitch involving the Chao Stadium races and the texture of the mating flowers, and the neutral garden fruit as well. It seems to only be triggered by competing in the races. You don't even have to complete a race. After you exit back into the Chao Garden, you will notice all the neutral garden fruit have their texture changed to a dull green, along with mating flowers having the wrong texture too. Simply entering the cave won't trigger the glitch, Chao Karate does not trigger it, the race menu won't trigger it, only actually starting a race will cause it. It's reset back to normal after exiting Chao World. Also in the Steam version, when your Chao plants trees, they will grow in a glitched way where only some of the tree is visible. Only part of the stalk, leaves and the fruit can be seen. Strangely, when Rouge climbs onto a wall and then moves to the left, her eyes will look distorted. This is more noticeable in the Hero Garden when you climb onto the ledge that has the circle roof on it, which is really fucking weird. Similarly, if you go to the Chao Kindergarten while holding any object from a Chao Garden and look closely while Knuckles is walking towards the building, you'll see that his right ankle is twisting continuously for some reason. Now, this is probably the most famous glitch in the game, and essential to know for quick, efficient Chao raising, especially since you can only hold 10 chaos drives and or animals at a time. Instead of letting the Chao grab the chaos drive or animal off of the player character, you can trick the game by placing it directly in front of the Chao. When done properly, the Chao will absorb the chaos drive or animal as if the player had given it to the Chao directly, and will again be flung away from the Chao while still being interactable, allowing the player to grab the chaos drive or animal again to reuse it. This can be done to level up a Chao really quickly, as you don't need to keep returning to action stages to retrieve more chaos drives and or animals. While this is also a very well-known glitch, well, not a glitch exactly, rather just an oversight, that I covered in the cut content video, it also makes sense to cover it here, and it has to do with accessing the test level in SA2 Battle without an action replay code. Firstly, go through the second last checkpoint, the one with the Chao key besides it. When you make it to the last checkpoint, don't go through it. Next, you'll have to trigger a high jump, otherwise known as a super bounce, in this wall, which can be done by charging a spin dash, jumping and performing a bound jump. Once you're on top of this platform, spin dash onto this one, then jump here, die and return to the platform. Then, before the screen blacks out, jump out once again, but this time don't come back. This will cause you to hit the goal ring, triggering the result screen while you respawn at the last checkpoint. Now break the Chao crate, charge up a spin dash just as the result screen is about to end, let go and grab the Chao key, and now you'll be inside the test level. Well, it turns out you can also do this with Tails and Knuckles. For the first, in Mission Street, break open the Chao crate near the police cars. You should make your way to the part of the level where the platforms try to crush you. When the camera locks, jump down and try to hover to where the Chao key was. Due to the camera being too far away, the texture will not load, so the icon is never generated on screen. Thus, you'll be teleported to the test stage. While for the latter, in Wild Canyon, find the Chao key crate and break it. Then climb to the surrounding wall and go on the large X-shaped platform above. Then press both of the camera buttons. After that step of the platform, you should land on the Chao key below. The Chao key's HUD texture glitches, so it shows the actual model of the key instead of the image. Now, when you clear the level, you should get sent into the test level. You can also send a gun truck back on its course. When the truck is in the air, perform a homing attack once. Then when it hits the ground, continuously homing attack the truck without moving the analog stick. When you reach the top of the hill, you will not be able to jump, but you will be able to freely move around. Be sure to keep to the far left or right to avoid triggering the dash panels. If you keep moving against the truck, make sure that you don't touch it. The truck should eventually end up clipping through the wall and get stuck in there. And lastly for this video, did you know that there is a 6th mission in the game? In the level select screen, move to the Chao world. Select it with A, but then press B to go back rather than proceeding into the world. This is relevant because it causes the most recent menu to be a character select menu with 6 options, instead of a mission select menu with 5. Next, go to any stage where all 5 missions have been completed. Hold A plus B at the same time to select it, and instead of seeing the mission select menu, the screen will turn black. Navigate to the right 5 times, and then select the 6th option, the so-called Mission 6. The 6th mission plays identically to the first one, but with some oddities. On the title card, the mission description box just says mission, not 6th mission or even 1st mission. The objective is also rather unusual. Each level has an internal number unrelated to its order in the story, but rather based on the order they were created during development, causing some oddities where, for example, White Jungle will use Pumpkin Hill's objective. And in most stages, completing this mission will softlock the game without writing any data, rather proceeding to the level select. The only levels that can be completed normally are the route stages. However, completing Route 101 will make the game write it as garbage data to the chunk of memory reserved for Route 280 stats. Should you go ahead and complete Route 280, the save data will be written as garbage to the memory where the kart race minigame normally goes, but due to it being out of place, attempting to play it again on this save file will crash the game, corrupting that stage permanently. Also interesting is that Sega used a Chao camera mod for the PC version to capture footage for the Sonic 30th Anniversary Symphony, and thank the creator of the mod accent in the Symphony's credits. Speaking of mods, and to really finish the video off, I want to shout out some mods which helped me out a ton to make these videos, and other ones that I simply enjoy and think you should check out. Firstly, and of course I had to, make sure to check out the SA Mod Manager by Sora, and it's easy actually. Even so, I have to confess that I've been using the outdated SA2 mod loader by Main Memory and Sonic Freak 94, which does still work normally, although won't receive any more updates. But yeah, if you want to run mods, make sure to check one of them out. Of course, I recommend checking out the updated one. Speaking of these modders, the debug mode by Sora and character select plus by Main Memory were also very useful in grabbing some stuff for thumbnails. If you're interested in modding, also make sure to check out the SA Tools toolset made by a bunch of modders over at the XX modding community, which were particularly useful for me to make the level transition title cards. Now for mods that I actually enjoy, if you're really into the Chao garden, I recommend checking out all of Chao Island's mods over at Game Banana, as they have a ton of them that add more flavor to this aspect of the game, especially their Chao World Extended mod, which is really good. For quality of life mods, Tweaked Water Fog by Hoppy Boppy Bunny changes the water effect to match the environment better, while SA2 Input Controls by Shadetic corrects the sensitivity issue that makes the controller dead zone in the PC port horrendous, making balancing while grinding much harder than it should be. SA2 Render Fix by the same modder is also great and fixes the many graphical issues resulting from the PC port being a port of a port of a port or something like that. And yeah, that's about it for mods I can really think of. If you know any that deserve a shoutout, don't hesitate to talk about it in the comments. But yeah, that's about it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, make sure to check out the other 2 parts covering cut content and prototypes, and also subscribe and turn on notifications as these videos take a lot of effort. You can also support me on Patreon for €1.50 and get perks like early access to videos and your name at the end of the screen, as well as future-proofing my content. I also have a Twitter if you want to follow me there, and check out my community tab once in a while, where I post quite frequently with video news. And that's about it really. I'll hopefully see you soon.